Just a quick note before the video starts, Six Lick Productions is now on Patreon, so if you like the work I do and would like to help support it, click the link and become a patron today. Even $1 goes a long way to helping out. Now, on to the show. Episode 11 is the worst episode in the series. And I know that me saying this is not new information.
Is it get... Wow, you...
But there's literally not a frame of this episode that doesn't send me flying into a frenzied pants-shitting rage. Why does Crow immediately open fire on his sister and then turn around and try to make peace with her even though he essentially initiated combat? Why is them being birds still supposed to be a big deal? Why is RWBY butting into a conversation between adults? How did Cinder know to shoot the fireball at RWBY at that exact moment? How did she know RWBY was going to be standing right there? Was it some kind of thing they practiced beforehand? Was there some kind of code in place? Why are they surprised to learn that Lionheart trapped them? They've known literally all volume that something shifty was going on with him. Why is every single person here surprised? Why is Cinder wasting her time on Jaune when she spent 2 volumes wanting RWBY's blood? Why does the dialogue between Crow and Raven suck? Why is Leo such a bitch? Why does this scene cut away here? Why would you deliberately cut away from the action for that long a pause? Why does Weiss continue to try to summon when it's shown it won't work? Why does she apparently not remember how to fight like she did before? Why is now the time RWBY brings out the Silver Eyes? Why is Silver Eyes suddenly so easy to defeat that a swift hit to the head does it fine? Why does Jaune stab with a swinging weapon? Why did they reuse the animation from the intro? How does Cinder's gimp-ass throw from across the room even come close to piercing her target? Why do they just stand there? Why do they just stand there? Why do they just stand there? Ah!
There is no middle finger big enough.
Like, God, the sheer awfulness here is just fucking mind-boggling. Like, they had to make a conscious choice not to show any action here, to have it be as slow and as cumbersome as possible when the beginning of the fight is supposed to be the part that sets us up, that gets us excited, and that is fucking gone here. This is the beginning of the finale. This is what brings us into the final 4 episode. This boring, paint-drying, lackluster, messy, uncoordinated, uninspired piece of shit! So yeah, this episode is so bad it makes my eyeballs bleed. If you want a more comprehensive assessment on the animation, the Floof Artist exists. And everything that happens after is only marginally an improvement. Marginally. Because the rest of it is still fucking garbage. Now, I don't inherently have a problem with Hazel's backstory because a dead sibling is a good reason to go on a crusade, but the major thing wrong with this is that he sided with the woman who is in control of the monsters his sister had joined up to fight. Maybe he was disillusioned, but that's still pretty disrespectful to your sister's memory, and also being on the side of the monsters that are going to destroy the world. Laws of equivalent exchange, this is not, my guy. Hazel, you always struck me as a logical guy, so tell me please how siding with the monsters your sister was fighting to protect the world against was a better idea to honor her memory. And also, dude, she died in training. Unless Ozpin's landing strategy just didn't go according to plan, it's likely she kind of just made a mistake. Which happens. Likely it wasn't really anybody's fault, it just was an accident. I know it's kind of assholeish to say, well, it's what she signed up for, but hey, it's what she signed up for. I suppose you could use it on the grounds of Ozpin being the true villain, which the show does try to acknowledge, but in the most random ways possible. Like the intent is there, but not for the reasons you'd think they'd be. 2 people volunteer to be turned into birds, that makes Ozpin evil, but not him taking over the body of a little boy. And yeah, child soldiers. Which is something you kind of take for granted when your protagonists are just students. Like, they're the heroes, the show revolves around them. It's easy to forget that they shouldn't be having the weight of the world on their shoulders. RWBY keeps bringing up this idea that it's wrong for the kids to be getting into the front lines in this conflict, but I don't really see them offering any other options. I mean, Ironwood did, and for all his paranoia, dude had a good point, but that kind of went to hell in a handbasket. Out of the whole world, only one guy has offered viable solutions to using kids in combat, and the rest just push it off on the kids. So, come on, people. Come on, geniuses. If there's an alternate solution here, I'd fucking love to hear it. But now, Weiss... God, do I even need to say it anymore? I'm becoming a broken record. Was it not enough that you felt the need to slice her storylines in half? Was it not enough that she had fucking Jaune hounding after her time after time after time despite clearly not being interested? But now we do this, which the force of this throw at this distance should not have had the power to pierce 1/10 of the way through her, let alone halfway through her. And then, And then you made her injury, her trauma, all of that, you made that all about Jaune and him finally realizing his fucking semblance, which the majority of the even halfway intelligent fans already figured out 4 fucking volumes ago. And Weiss's injury did not seem to mean anything else unless Weiss has some liver failure in the future, and given these characters have survived falls that would have shattered their bones, monster bites, and scorpion venom, I doubt they're going to let a potential liver laceration play a factor in a character's future.
I'm just saying, if Weiss and Jaune turn out to be canon, I am taking a shit on every single animator's desk over at their studio. Not only is it a direct fuck you to the audience, but after all the creepy stalker shit Jaune pulled, honestly, it's going to be really fucking insulting.
Ren, talk to me.
This is bad.
Yes, Ren. Yes, it is. It's fucking terrible.
This is just a kick in the face. Silver Eyes doesn't get mentioned once all volume outside of the villains referring to her as the Silver-Eyed Girl, and then this scene comes up and it's over in a flash and it means absolutely fucking nothing. It's like they took every complaint about how Silver Eyes are handled and gave the complainers a giant double middle finger. God forbid we want to get a better idea on how Silver Eyes works. God forbid the power that is going to likely save the world in the end gets a proper explanation, or any training, or even any actual acknowledgement of it. Like, I'm not crazy, right? 2 volumes after being introduced, there should have been some kind of follow-up conversation. At some point, Ozpin should have taken her aside to give her some personal training. What he would have done and how he would have done it, I don't know, but in my defense, I'm not the fucking show writer, so that's not my responsibility, now is it?
Like, how long is the audience supposed to wait on that? 3 years? 5? 10? Like, to the people who are telling us to wait, I'm asking you genuinely, what is the appropriate amount of time that has to pass for a conversation like that to get a proper follow-up?
You okay?
No. I'm angry.
Really? I couldn't tell. Your face doesn't change from happy very often. Okay, I need to take away from this action scene before I burst any more blood vessels, and let's just go to the main course, which is supposed to be the real final battle between Raven and Cinder.
I've been told that it would probably help if I got the positives out of the way first. Okay.
Well, the room with the door looks really pretty. The leaves falling and the designs of the surrounding walls, trees, and door all look very polished and stand out from a design standpoint. And even though it looks like it came out of a much better PlayStation 3 game, the realm where the relic is held looks really, really damn cool, especially with the particle effects that give it a really otherworldly feel. So, if nothing else, the aesthetic of this place is on point.
And that's about it. Because the actual story of this segment is pretty bad.
You know, as sad as it is, I actually kind of called this twist. Because they said the maiden disappeared a decade ago, and I brought up the possibility in the reactions that the chances her powers had swapped hosts were very high. And I was right. Granted, I didn't expect this, but I was still right in my own way. But people are calling this a good twist, and I'm like, Like, the ending of Saw is a good twist. Chapter 17 of RWBY Reconstruction is a great twist. Xenoblade Chronicles redefined fantastic twist 3 separate times. This is a marginally passable twist at best, and that's because I'm not sure which bits were intentional and which bits were just stupid.
Take out the heiress. Don't bother wasting your power. She's not worth it.
The Raven vs. Cinder fight is all flash and very little actual substance. It looks pretty, but there's no feeling behind it. Which is weird to say because there's a lot going on in it. Rocks falling from the sky, swords being pulled literally out of nowhere, Cinder's theme blaring in the background. I should be pumped the fuck up, and instead I'm just looking at images on a screen and flashing lights and feeling nothing. The sequences are there, but the emotions are gone. Like, why should we care who wins this fight? Neither character has given me a compelling reason to care about them. In fact, I'm actively rooting for them to kill each other off. It's a massive cunt taking on another massive cunt. It's like the tagline for Alien vs. Predator. No matter who wins, we lose. Here's a tip for writers. When you point out your enemy's weakness, maybe follow that up with some kind of exploitation of it, because Cinder's arm not having aura doesn't seem to matter in this particular instance when Raven doesn't do anything with it. So I'm having a hard time following the logic here, because the only reason Cinder didn't just grab the relic and run was because she wanted revenge on RWBY. And yet, despite this fireball, which I'm not convinced wasn't just a lucky guess, she doesn't even fucking try to go for RWBY. Like, guys, what happened? Did you forget? Were you bored? Did you not care anymore? All of the above? But Cinder killed Pyrrha. Jaune has every right to fight her. Okay, granted, but here's my counter to that, and this is kind of complicated, but try and follow me here. I don't give a fuck. Jaune's girlfriend melodrama means nothing to me, and it shouldn't mean anything to you either. When you consider the bigger picture, being RWBY has a superpower that can make the darkest grim in the world pee themselves in terror, and if the show ever gets around to actually acknowledging its presence, it's probably going to be the power that saves the world. That is more important. Cinder's desire to enact revenge against the girl who crippled her is a more compelling storyline than Jaune is sad because his fuck toy died. You can argue that Cinder was holding off on RWBY because of the crippling weakness thing, which I think you're giving Cinder way too much credit if you think she's considering that given the last 2 volumes, but for the sake of argument, let's allow that to possibly be the case. The problem is that there's this little thing in storytelling called emotional payoff. If you are going to lead up to something, and you're going to spend multiple episodes or multiple volumes leading up to something, then you need to damn well pay it off. Otherwise, what was the point of establishing it in the first place? Because Cinder is now dead, which effectively means anything involving her is now completely pointless. And even if you bring her back, she is now 0 for 2 on accomplishing her mission of getting the relics and defeating RWBY. How is anyone supposed to see her as a legitimate threat when she is constantly failing? A villain that continues to fail has no inherent drama. This entire finale could have been avoided if she had a sassy gay friend. No, if she had just snuck in and grabbed the relic when everyone else was sleeping and then got the fuck out before anyone could realize. There was literally nothing to stand in her way of doing that. You can't leave those kind of holes in the writing where logic is counteracted by stupidity. This didn't need to happen this way. Salem has no control over her subordinates, which makes her look completely incompetent by proxy. Now she's lost her maiden, she's effectively lost the White Fang as a fighting force, and she's killed off her inside man when she didn't even accomplish half her goal. Or really any of her goal. All she has now, aside from the Grimm, are 2 teenagers, the Hulk, the escaped psych patient, and the only villain actually worth a damn purely because there hasn't been anything substantial to fuck up his character yet.
I am not scared of these villains! A villain that is constantly failing in their objective is about as threatening as Team Rocket.
It's not just badly written, the show has a problem of making characters so unbelievably stupid that they go against all logic and common sense just to further the plot, or build some needless tension to give viewers the illusion that stuff is happening, and that it happens for good reason and makes sense. This is elementary school level shit. Aw man, poor Amber Lee Connors. For those unaware, because as far as anime is concerned, she's still pretty recent, but she's a really fucking good voice actress. She's good in My Hero Academia.
Don't be embarrassed! That's so like you! Please date me.
Shut up.
She's good in Love Tyrant.
You sure get around. How many women does it take to satisfy you?
And she's terrific in DBZ Abridged.
How quickly bravado goes out the window when you're flat on your ass.
But here she's not. Amber Lee Connors is giving nothing to work with for this character, and as a result, she comes off as flat, bored, and with no personality. Her entire reason for existing is purely for the bait and switch and no other reason. She has no other character outside of it. And I know I sound like a broken record, but I will never stop mourning the fantastic voice talent that gets wasted in this show. And that's including Daman Mills, who in his very brief appearance in My Hero Academia managed to play a way more compelling character than this guy. In fact, he voiced 2 compelling villains in that show, which is a 200% increase from RWBY. But Lionheart, I don't get what they were going for with him. They didn't do anything with him being a faunus. Hell, you have to have a good eye if you even catch the fact that he is. On top of that, I can't tell what they were going for. Were they trying to make him sympathetic? Were they not trying to do that? What? For most of the volume, it feels like they're trying to, and then right in the last arc of the volume, they just kind of give up and he goes full villain. Either way, they make it next to impossible for us to feel anything about his death. And even then, I'm not sure if they even cared if we did or not. You know, for as much as they want to try to find the moral gray area with the Faunus arc, they sure spend an unholy amount of time painting the Faunus race as irredeemable douchebags, save for the Belladonna's Sun and Velvet. I mean, the jury's still out on Ilya, and the less I remember Neon Cat, the happier I find myself. And speaking of the Faunus...
You gotta be fucking kidding.
Okay. Let's break this down, shall we?
Adam has been this harbinger hanging over Blake's head pretty much since the show started. Their relationship was filled with emotional abuse. Adam stabbed her in the gut, sliced off her friend's arm, threatened all of her other loved ones, causing her to abandon everyone and go on a 6 to 8 month boat cruise. Then, he sent his minions after her family. Her entire arc since the beginning has more or less involved him in some way, spoken or unspoken. And now, First off, she blows him off, which from the relationship perspective is the hardest blow, so fine, even though technically she did come for him because she had no way of knowing the rest of RWBY was here, and they were here specifically to stop him. And then she sidesteps him, which this makes no sense because she warped right into his sword slice, so she still should be in 2 halves on the ground, and then knocks him out in 1 punch. That's how much they care about Blake's arc. That's what Blake's arc means to the writers of RWBY. When they can take an arc that has been built up for years and end it on the worst one-hit KO imaginable, and then, because they didn't fail enough, they had him Naruto run off into the bushes, despite the fact that police were everywhere, in hopes that they can still salvage some kind of meaningful climax for this somewhere down the line, failing to realize that they blew their load right then, and no one is going to care now.
There's literally no one in the world that I don't hate right now.
RT Animation's writers don't understand consequences. Or cause and effect for that matter, but mostly consequences. When characters fail, either through negligence or action, their failures matter little if there are no consequences. The consequences may affect the characters directly or the people around them, but they have to be tangible and meaningful to bring anything to the plot. The closest RWBY has ever come to consequences is Volume 3, and even then, how much any of that has mattered has been questionable at best. The only characters that have actually dealt with any meaningful consequences from that are Yang and Jaune, and Yang's arc is inconsistent even on its best days. Blake's arc is disappointing and bad because it ultimately didn't matter. I don't walk away from Blake's storyline feeling like we gained anything or that she learned anything as a character. Everything was accomplished through the sheer and utter incompetence of the villains. The only big surprise of this arc is that both her parents made it out alive with barely a scratch on them, and I still don't know whether to be impressed at the restraint or disappointed at the restraint as a result. Everything about this arc felt too clean. Her victories felt incredibly hollow because a lot of them don't feel deserved by her. Most everything resolved itself without much effort from her. Even the family assassination plot lost all urgency the minute one of their toughest looking goons got taken out by a fucking tea tray. Here at this scene is where the realization comes in that Blake's storyline has never mattered. By taking Adam down the way they did, they have completely undone everything they were setting up back in Volume 3, or if you want to get even dirtier with that, back in the Black trailer. And yeah, Adam still got away, due to some heavy bullshit, but I'm never going to view him as a legitimate threat ever again. Between all the screaming like a toddler and getting jobs so hard it makes this guy look more credible in comparison, Adam has lost any and all urgency to me. And no, his character trailer did nothing to bring that back. On a brighter note, there are way too many upskirt shots this volume.
You thought I wasn't going to do it. You were almost home free without me mentioning the upskirt stuff. Well, to be fair, I almost cut this segment out because going back to look at the older volumes, I realized that some example of this has always kind of existed in some way, shape, or form. But with the exception of this scene in Volume 2, it was mostly just isolated incidences and not like a main staple. Actually, if you want to get technical, the real problem started in Volume 4 when they switched over from Posa to Maya. And Volume 5 took the situation and made it a whole lot worse.
Like, I get that anime is full of this shit because the Japanese are perverts who don't understand subtlety, and while I don't approve of the underage girls being sexualized because, you know, I'm not a pedophile, I at least expect it from them. I know the chances of me seeing something over-sexualized in anime are about the same chances as Maine in Vermont getting buried under 15 feet of snow this winter. But the thing about RWBY is that Monty made it clear that they weren't going to do that, or that he didn't intend to do that. And you can make the argument that they didn't because they didn't show actual underwear, but these come about as damn close as it comes to looking straight up the girls' skirts. I mean, come on! Come on! This was not anywhere near as bad in the earlier volumes. I'm just saying, something in the priorities changed. Like, I'm not measuring skirt lengths here, but what I do know is that RWBY looked perfectly fine in the first 3 volumes, and now they've got her looking like she's about to bang 5 dudes behind a fucking KFC.
It does not need to be this way!
So yeah, Yang and Raven. A lot of people have been praising the performance of Yang and Raven in the scene, calling it their best works. You people do know that's not really a high point, right? Raven is easily in the top 5 worst actors of the show.
Sorry, Anna, but it's really not great.
And Barbara, frankly, has never been very good. She's fine in other shows where she plays characters that don't sound exactly like her normal voice, but Barbara has always said that Yang was an extension of her own personality.
Miles, Carrie, and Monty described her as being very similar to me, so I kind of just took it as, okay, well, I'm going to pretend that this is me, and I'm just going to voice it like I would voice it.
And I think that kind of backfired because she doesn't really emote a lot of the time. Yeah, she screams and yells and gets angry, but the real serious moments, most of all the time, she comes off incredibly flat. So saying this is their best performance is like giving a small bump in a straight line of bland mediocrity. But this scene is okay, but like, shouldn't Raven already know this? Like, her entire goal was to stay off Salem's radar, and then she willingly threw herself into the fray. What Yang is saying should already be common knowledge to her. If you take the relic, you're gonna be in danger. And this is what I mean. These villains are going out of their way to make their lives even more difficult than they need to be. If I had to compare who the biggest moron between Cinder and Raven is, I'd say Cinder wins by a nose hair because she did literally everything wrong. Raven doesn't feel like a person. Her characterization and storyline are so wildly inconsistent and all over the place that she comes off as someone with severe schizophrenia with some ADHD mixed in for good measure. She's more of a mouthpiece for whatever the writer needs at that moment. It's times like these that I wish I knew what the original plan for her was, because I doubt this was it. The dream sequence stinger basically spits in the face of what she is now, or vice versa, I suppose. But now Raven is gone, and there's really no need to bring her back into the story in a main role. Because what is she going to do? She doesn't want to fight Salem, she doesn't want to help Yang and Crow and Oscar, and we see she clearly doesn't go back to her bandit camp. Unless she's going to get an arc with Ty where she learns to stop being a selfish cunt and use her main powers for good, there's no need to bring Raven back into the narrative. She's done. And the good guys get the relic, which is a lamp. I feel there's some symbolism here from ancient times, but for the life of me, I can't figure it out. But the reason this bothers me is because this wasn't earned. Our heroes spent all volume doing nothing, and they did terribly in the fight, and the only reason they succeeded was because the villains hate each other just as much as they hate the good guys.
I need to hammer this point in right here and now. This volume was accomplished through the sheer and utter incompetence of all of their characters. Every one of them. Everyone. Without fail. No exceptions. There was not a single character in this volume that did not completely fail on some fundamental level.
From the Mistral crew sitting around all volume, to the Belladonna group not taking a more active role against Fennec and Corsac until they were literally right on their doorstep, to the White Fang for being so easy to be picked off, to the villains who turned on each other before the battle was even fucking over. They beat everyone off screen. A 4-episode fight, and it concludes off screen. It's shit like this that always makes me skeptical whenever they say they've learned from past volumes.
Have you been listening to a single word I've said? Sheer and utter incompetence.
You know, guys, when I said I would have liked to see more stuff from the intros make their way into the actual show, this wasn't really what I had in mind. I was expecting more of the thematic elements of the intros, not a goofy puppet-looking fucking thing. So the villains escape because I guess we still need Emerald and Mercury in the story for reasons, and everyone is exhausted but still relatively happy. And now comes the big confrontation that we've all been waiting for, where Yang confronts Blake on leaving and all the emotional turmoil that her leaving has caused.
That's all that matters, that we're all here together. Right?
Yeah.
I never know if then you appear.
God damn it.
Miles and Carrie often cite because life as a reason why people behave certain ways. And like, in any other circumstance, I would accept that. Life isn't always dramatic. Sometimes emotions and grudges just fizzle out. The big conversation doesn't always pan out the way you want it to. But this is a fictional high-action setting. Yang's lost an arm, Blake ran off, the world's gone to shit, it's been at least half a year, and there needs to be some fucking repercussions for actions. If this was a slice of life kind of show, if the purpose was to depict these kids just going through the drudges of everyday life, then yes, I could perfectly agree with this. But it's not. It's a fucking sci-fi fantasy action series where reality and common sense gets turned on its head every other episode. And you know what? At the end of the day, you're writing fiction. Fiction allows us to have the conversations that don't happen in real life. So that confrontation you don't get to have, here is the place you can make it happen. Also, remember that the audience doesn't have the same mindset as you. What you as a writer consider obvious between the lines can often be because it's in your head. You can imagine it. The audience doesn't have that same level of awareness. And this is such a hard thing to try and argue because people do like things more realistic. People do want to see life depicted accurately. And there is a time and a place for that. But in fiction, it's okay to let real life take a backseat in order to let the fucking plot happen. You can't just cite life as an excuse for characters to not fucking do anything, to not address the big issues. And I know you can use that as an argument for why stupid things can be allowed to happen. Well, it's not real life, so why shouldn't Aura be inconsistent? Why shouldn't Crow being a bird be a big deal? And you know what? Yeah, I can't argue that, because that's why they do it. That's why they write it this way, so that we can all just keep going round and round the same fucking mulberry bush, and nothing of importance gets solved. It's the same kind of thing like that when they say they want to introduce characters that are seemingly flat but had more to them. There's nothing wrong with hidden depths, it's preferred in writing, but seem flat should not be the fucking starting point! And yeah, that's Volume 5, an entire volume of sitting around waiting for the rest of the cast to catch up, and then one of the worst climaxes of all time. There were some good moments and even some good fight scenes, but like, ultimately, what was the fucking point? Yeah, they got the relic, but the only reason the good guys won was because the villains were idiots. The heroes weren't proactive in any way. This volume was accomplished by quite literally doing nothing. You know something? If I didn't know Rooster Teeth, didn't know they had several more seasons planned, and didn't know their commitment to squeeze every last penny out of a product before dropping it like a dried up prune, I would say they're sprinting towards endgame. The rushed nature in which the Mistral arc was ended, Raven is essentially finished as an important character because there's no real reason she should throw herself back into the fray. The White Fang is, for all intents and purposes, no longer on the playing field. Cinder and Adam have lost all sense of dignity, if not written out entirely. The interpersonal conflicts between Team RWBY has been more or less swept under the rug. Really, all that's left are 2 relics and Salem, and then they can write this show off forever. Obligation to Monty over. It's obvious by now this show is a chore for them to write, no matter what happy bullshit they spout online. They want to put the show to bed so people will stop giving them shit for how poorly it was handled. But the sad thing is, I think they get the wrong ideas from the backlash. I think people get angry about this shipping issue or about Jaune or some inane bullshit like that. But that's all a distraction from the real issue. They can't write. They don't know how to write a good story, and they don't seem to care enough to learn. They're trying to appease what the fans want, which mostly seems to just be shipping fuel, and that's not a good way to go about your business. It's becoming clear that all of RWBY's resources are being pulled towards Genlock. The animators, the voice talent, and just the general atmosphere leads me to believe they want RWBY over ASAP so they can focus on the next big thing. I mean, just look at how badly Red vs. Blue got shafted. If it weren't for the occasional clip put out, would you have even known that RVB 16 was going on? And the move away from YouTube certainly won't help. I mean, I understand why they're doing it. I completely understand from the business perspective. And business-wise, it's a smart move. But it's going to turn into a double-edged sword when their viewership begins to decline. I hope Genlock succeeds. I sincerely do. Because if it doesn't, if all the effort taken off RWBY for Genlock and the show ultimately doesn't succeed, that's going to be a huge blow to the animation department. That's a huge gamble that didn't pay off. I don't know, maybe it's just the cynic in me, but at this point, if Volume 6 turned out to be a 180, I'll be impressed. They've said they're going to put more emphasis on getting scripts done and reviewed by outside eyes ahead of time to allow for more time to work on the episodes. Which, I mean, time management is a complaint I've had from the very beginning, so that seems like a step in the right direction. But at this point, that's the only hope I've allowed myself to have. Because they've said they've learned from past mistakes at the end of Volume 4, and Volume 5 turned out worse, so I honestly don't know how much learning they've really done, and I don't know how much more leeway I'm supposed to give them. And really, when you think about it, that sums up the spirit of RWBY these last couple of years. They do nothing, they learn nothing, and then they pretend that they've actually grown.
There is no beating Salem.
You don't know yet.